Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the exploration ship Liberty and watched the planet Zerion 7 grow larger on the main screen. The year was 2387, and humanity had finally built ships that could travel to distant star systems in the Kepler sector. Jake had been chosen to lead this mission because he was careful and smart. His crew trusted him completely. Dr. Lisa Rodriguez sat at her workstation studying the scanner readings from the planet below. She was the best xenoarchaeologist in human space and had spent years studying alien ruins on other worlds. But the readings from Zerion 7 were different from anything she had ever seen. The structures buried beneath the planet's surface were massive and very old. The Liberty entered orbit around Zerion 7, and Jake gave the order to begin detailed scans. The planet had a thin atmosphere and no signs of current life, but the buried structures stretched across entire continents. Some of the buildings appeared to be kilometers tall, even though they were mostly underground now. Lisa looked up from her console with excitement in her eyes. She told Jake that the preliminary dating showed these ruins were at least 12 million years old. That made them far older than any known galactic civilization. Most alien species had only developed space travel within the last few thousand years. These ruins predated everything by an impossible amount of time. Jake ordered the landing teams to prepare for surface exploration. The ship sent down several shuttles, carrying archaeologists and security teams. Lisa insisted on being in the first shuttle to reach the surface. She had studied alien artifacts her whole life, but had never seen anything this old or this large. The shuttle landed near what appeared to be the entrance to a massive underground complex. The team set up their equipment and began careful excavation work. Lisa used advanced scanners to map the interior of the structures without damaging anything. What she found made her call Jake immediately. The ruins contained symbols and markings. That looked familiar, but she could not place where she had seen them before. The architecture used geometric patterns that reminded her of something from Earth history. She took detailed photographs and measurements of everything they found. 3 days into the excavation, Lisa made a discovery that changed everything. Deep inside the main structure, they found a chamber filled with strange, crystalline devices. The crystals were dark and appeared to be some kind of data storage system. When Lisa carefully touched one of the crystals, it began to glow with a soft, blue light. The crystal projected a holographic display that filled the entire chamber. The display showed star maps and navigation charts covering thousands of light years. Lisa recognized many of the star systems, including Earth and the human colonies. But what shocked her was that Earth was marked with special symbols that translated, in her mind, as Origin Point Alpha. The translation happened automatically in her brain, as if the alien system was designed to communicate directly with human minds. She could read the alien text as easily as if it were written in English. The star maps showed travel routes between thousands of worlds, and Earth appeared to be the central hub of an enormous interstellar empire. Lisa called the rest of the team into the chamber to witness what she had found. Everyone could read the alien text without any difficulty. The system seemed to recognize them as humans and adjusted its display accordingly. The maps showed Earth connected to colony worlds across the galaxy by a network of faster-than-light travel routes. Jake arrived on the surface to see the discovery for himself. He stood in the crystal chamber and watched the holographic displays with growing amazement. The maps showed human settlements on worlds that current humanity had never visited. Some of the colonies were marked as research stations, while others appeared to be industrial centers or military bases. The most disturbing discovery was the timeline data embedded in the crystal archives. According to the alien records, the vast human empire had existed 12 million years ago and had vanished completely in a very short period of time. The records showed no signs of war or invasion. The empire had simply stopped all communication and activity across thousands of worlds simultaneously. Lisa spent hours downloading data from the Crystal archives, while Jake coordinated with the Liberty to send everything back to Earth immediately. The implications were staggering. If the records were accurate, then humans had once ruled a significant portion of the galaxy before mysteriously disappearing and somehow ending up on Earth with no memory of their former empire. The Crystal archives contained detailed maps showing the locations of other human sites across the galaxy. Some appeared to be research facilities, while others looked like military installations or manufacturing centers. All of them had been abandoned at the same time 12 million years ago. As the team prepared to return to the Liberty, Jake realized that this discovery would change everything about how humanity saw itself in the galaxy. They were not newcomers to space. They were returning to worlds their ancestors had built long before any current alien civilization existed. Dr. Peter Kim sat in his office at the Earth Historical Institute staring at the data files that had arrived from the Liberty. As one of humanity's leading historians, he had studied human development for decades, but nothing in the historical record prepared him for what he was reading. The Crystal archives from Zarion 7 contained information that challenged everything humans believed about their origins. Amy Foster knocked on Peter's door and entered carrying her own analysis reports. She was a brilliant linguist who specialized in ancient human languages and had been working around the clock to decode the alien text patterns. What she had discovered made her question everything she thought she knew about human evolution. Peter showed Amy the timeline data from the archives. According to the alien records, humans had not evolved naturally on Earth. Instead, they had been placed there as a backup colony by an advanced human civilization that had already spread across thousands of worlds. Earth was designated as a reserve population center designed to preserve human genetics in case something happened to the main empire. Amy explained that the language patterns in the archives matched structures found in the oldest human cave paintings and stone carvings on Earth. The symbols that ancient humans had carved into rocks matched exactly with the navigation markers used by the Galactic Human Empire. It was as if the early humans on Earth had retained some genetic memory of their true origins. The two scientists worked together to piece together the story hidden in the archive data. The Galactic Human Empire had been incredibly advanced with technology that allowed instant communication across thousands of light years. They had developed faster than light travel that made crossing the galaxy possible in weeks rather than centuries. Their ships could manipulate matter at the atomic level and terraform entire worlds in decades. Peter found records showing that the Empire had not just colonized empty worlds. They had also created new forms of life designed for specific purposes. Some species were engineered to maintain planetary ecosystems, while others were designed for mining operations or deep space exploration. The Empire had filled the galaxy with life forms that served various functions in their civilization. Amy discovered that many of these created species had been given intelligence and allowed to develop their own cultures. The Empire had acted more like gardeners than conquerors, spreading life and consciousness throughout the galaxy. Each species had been designed with specific capabilities that would help them survive and thrive in their assigned environments. The archive data showed that this golden age had lasted for millions of years, with the human empire growing larger and more sophisticated. Humans had become masters of genetic engineering and had created hundreds of intelligent species to share the galaxy with them. The relationship between humans and their created species appeared to have been cooperative, rather than exploitative, but then something had gone wrong. The archives showed that approximately 12 million years ago, the entire empire had begun preparing for what they called the Great Withdrawal. Humans across thousands of worlds had started shutting down their cities and technology. The created species had been left detailed instructions for governing themselves. Peter found records indicating that the withdrawal had been voluntary rather than the result of any external threat. The Empire's leaders had made a deliberate decision to enter some kind of long-term stasis or hibernation. The archives contained references to something called the Deep Sleep Protocol, but the details were encrypted beyond their current ability to decode. Meanwhile, on worlds across the galaxy, alien governments were beginning to detect the activation signal from the Zerion 7 archives. The signal was broadcasting on frequencies that had been silent for millions of years. Species that had developed their own space, faring civilizations were suddenly receiving messages in languages they had forgotten they knew. The Zathari Empire was the first to respond to the signal. Their crystalline ships detected the transmission, and their historians began searching through their oldest records for references to the mysterious frequency. What they found in their genetic memory banks terrified their leadership. The signal was associated with the return of the first builders. The Krill Confederation received the signal at their military headquarters on the fortress world of Kraxus. Their warrior culture had legends about ancient creators who had given them strength and honor in battle. But those legends also warned that the creators would return one day to judge whether their children had proven worthy of the gifts they had been given. Amy received new translation data as more alien species began responding to the signal. She discovered that many alien languages contained root words that were clearly derived from ancient human speech patterns. The aliens had developed their own cultures and civilizations, but their fundamental communication structures were based on human linguistic frameworks. Peter realized that the implications went far beyond simple archaeology. If the archive data was accurate, then most of the intelligent life in the galaxy existed because humans had created it millions of years ago. The current galactic civilization was built on the foundation of the lost human empire. The most disturbing discovery was that many alien species seemed to have genetic programming that made them instinctively loyal to humans. Amy found references in the alien response messages to behavioral patterns that activated when humans were detected. Some species experienced overwhelming urges to protect and serve humans, while others felt compelled to seek human approval and guidance. As reports continued to arrive from across the galaxy, Peter and Amy began to understand the scope of what humanity had accomplished in their first galactic empire. They had not just built a civilization. They had created an entire ecosystem of intelligent life designed to work together in harmony across thousands of worlds. But they had also built in safeguards and control mechanisms that were now beginning to activate as humans returned to space. The galaxy was waking up to the presence of its creators, and the response was not entirely welcome. Some alien species were embracing the return of their makers, while others were beginning to fear what human presence might mean for their independence. Captain Roy Baker guided his exploration ship Frontier toward the coordinates provided by the Zerion 7 archives. His engineer Sam Torres monitored the ship's systems as they approached what the ancient records indicated was a major human facility in the Vega system. Roy had volunteered for this mission because he wanted to see proof of humanity's galactic heritage with his own eyes. The facility appeared on their sensors as a massive structure floating in the asteroid belt around Vega Prime. It was clearly artificial and showed no signs of current activity, but the energy readings indicated that some systems were still functional after 12 million years. Sam reported that the structure was larger than any human space station ever built, with docking bays that could accommodate ships 10 times the size of the Frontier. As the Frontier approached the ancient facility, something unexpected happened. Lights began activating throughout the structure, and docking bay doors opened automatically. Sam checked his instruments and confirmed that the facility was responding to their presence without any communication from their ship. The ancient systems were recognizing them as humans and welcoming them home. Roy ordered his crew to proceed, with extreme caution as they entered the docking bay. The facility's artificial gravity activated as soon as their ship was inside, and breathable atmosphere began flowing into the bay. Somehow, the ancient systems knew exactly what humans needed to survive and were providing it automatically. Sam led the engineering team into the facility, while Roy coordinated with Earth to report their discoveries. The corridors and chambers were designed for human proportions, and the lighting adjusted automatically to levels comfortable for human eyes. Everything about the facility seemed designed specifically for human use, despite being abandoned for millions of years. The engineering team discovered that the facility contained manufacturing systems capable of producing technology far more advanced than anything current humanity possessed. The machines were controlled by interfaces that responded directly to human thought patterns. Sam found that he could operate the equipment simply by thinking about what he wanted it to do. Meanwhile, similar discoveries were happening across the galaxy as human exploration teams located other ancient facilities. Each site contained technology that activated only for humans and seemed designed to serve human needs. The implications were becoming clear to everyone involved. Humans were not discovering alien technology. They were reclaiming their own inheritance. Back on Earth, the alien response to these developments was becoming increasingly concerning. The Zathari Empire had dispatched survey fleets to monitor human activities, while the Krill Confederation was mobilizing their military forces. Other species were beginning to fear that the return of their creators meant the end of their independence. The Zathari ambassador arrived at Earth's orbital station, seeking an emergency meeting with human leadership. Ambassador Zethara was a tall, crystalline being whose people had developed one of the most advanced civilizations in the known galaxy. But when she spoke to human diplomats, her words carried an undertone of fear that surprised everyone present. Zethara explained that the Zathari had retained genetic memories of their origins that were now being triggered by human presence in space. Her people remembered being created to serve as caretakers for dead worlds and to terraform them back to life. The memory of their purpose was encoded in their DNA and was becoming stronger as more humans appeared in their territory. She told the human diplomats that many Zathari were experiencing overwhelming urges to abandon their current civilization and return to their original function as planetary gardeners. The activation of ancient human facilities was broadcasting signals that triggered these genetic programs. Her government was struggling to maintain order as their people began acting on instincts they did not understand. The Krill response was even more dramatic. General Vorthak contacted human military leaders directly with a message that was both respectful and threatening. He explained that the Krill had been created as warriors to defend human colonies from external threats. Their genetic programming made them incapable of directly attacking humans, but they could still fight to protect their own independence. Vorthak warned that many Krill were beginning to feel compelled to seek out humans and offer their services as protectors. This was causing massive disruption in Krill society, as their military forces struggled between their duty to their own government and their genetic programming to serve humans. He demanded that humans stop activating ancient facilities until a solution could be found. Roy and his team made another discovery that complicated the situation further. Deep inside the Vega facility, they found stasis chambers designed to preserve human life for millions of years. The chambers were empty, but showed signs of recent use within the last few centuries. Someone had been maintaining the facility and had only recently departed. Sam discovered that the facility's computer systems contained logs of regular maintenance performed by automated systems, but also entries made by actual humans. The logs indicated that small groups of humans had been awakening periodically from stasis to check on the facility and monitor galactic conditions before returning to sleep. The most recent logs showed that these guardian humans had detected the arrival of the Liberty at Zarian 7 and had decided it was time to begin the full awakening process. They had departed the facility to travel to other sites across the galaxy where they would begin activating more ancient technology and awakening additional human populations from stasis. Roy realized that current humanity was not alone in the galaxy. There were other humans who had never lost their memories of the ancient empire and had been waiting for the right time to reveal themselves. These guardian humans possessed technology and knowledge that made current human civilization look primitive. By comparison, As reports arrived from other exploration teams, it became clear that the awakening process was accelerating. Ancient facilities across the galaxy were coming online and responding to human presence. Some contained automated factories that began producing advanced ships and weapons. Others held databases with scientific knowledge that could advance human technology by thousands of years. The alien governments were beginning to panic as they realized the scope of what was happening. The humans they had known as a young species exploring space for the first time were actually the returning masters of a galactic empire. The technology being activated could make humanity the dominant force in the galaxy within a matter of years. But the most disturbing discovery was that the ancient programming built into alien species was not just about loyalty and service. Some species had been designed with genetic switches that could be activated by human technology. These switches could fundamentally alter alien behavior and even their physical characteristics to better serve human purposes. Dr. Grace Murphy stepped off the diplomatic shuttle onto the Zathari homeworld of Crystalis Prime, with Admiral Frank Hayes at her side. They were leading humanity's first official diplomatic mission to address the growing crisis caused by the awakening of ancient human technology. The Zathari had requested this meeting urgently as their society struggled with the genetic memories being triggered by human presence in the galaxy. The Zathari capital city was a marvel of crystal architecture that grew directly from the planet's surface like a living organism. Grace had studied Zathari culture for years, but seeing their world in person revealed details that had been hidden in academic reports. The city's design followed patterns that were somehow familiar, even though she had never seen anything like it before. High Curator Zephlon met them at the landing platform with a delegation of Zathari historians and scientists. His crystalline form towered over the humans, but his posture conveyed respect rather than dominance. He led them through corridors lined with crystal formations that pulsed with soft light in rhythm with their heartbeats. Zephlon brought the human delegation to the Archive of Beginnings, where the Zathari kept their oldest records and genetic memories. The chamber contained massive crystal formations that stored information in patterns of light and resonance. As Grace and Frank entered the chamber, the crystals began to glow more brightly, and new patterns appeared that had not been visible for millions of years. The High Curator explained that the crystals were responding to human genetic signatures and were revealing memories that had been locked away since the creation of the Zathari species. These memories showed the Zathari homeworld as it had been 12 million years ago, when human terraforming teams had transformed it from a barren rock into a living world. Grace watched in amazement as the crystal displays showed ancient humans working alongside newly created Zathari to build the first settlements on Crystalis Prime. The humans in the memories looked exactly like modern humans, but possessed technology that seemed almost magical in its capabilities. They could reshape matter with handheld devices and communicate across vast distances through thought alone. The most shocking revelation was that the Zathari had not evolved naturally on their world. The crystal memories showed human genetic, engineers creating the first Zathari from basic mineral formations found on the planet. The crystalline beings had been designed specifically to maintain and nurture the terraformed ecosystem that humans had created. Zephlon activated another section of the archive that revealed the relationship between humans and Zathari during the height of the ancient empire. The Zathari had served as the caretakers of thousands of worlds, transforming dead planets into gardens that could support other forms of life. They had taken pride in their role and had competed with each other to create the most beautiful and diverse ecosystems. Frank asked about the military implications of these revelations, and Zephlon led them to records of the Krill creation. The crystal displays showed human military engineers on the forge world of Craxus, designing warrior beings from the planet's aggressive native predators. The Krill had been given intelligence and honor codes, but their primary purpose was to defend human colonies from external threats. The archive revealed that dozens of species throughout the galaxy had been created by human genetic engineers for specific purposes. Some were designed for deep space exploration, while others were created to maintain complex technological systems. Each species had been given intelligence and the ability to develop their own cultures, but their fundamental nature remained tied to their original purpose. Grace realized that the current galactic civilization was not a collection of independently evolved species, but rather a vast extended family of beings, all created by ancient humans. The wars and conflicts between different alien species were essentially disputes between siblings who had forgotten their common origin. Meanwhile, on the Krill homeworld of Craxus, similar revelations were unfolding. The warrior species had discovered ancient human installations buried beneath their capital city that contained the original genetic templates used to create their people. The discovery was causing massive upheaval in Krill society as they struggled to understand their true nature. War Chief Groktal had assembled the Krill High Command to discuss the implications of their discoveries. The Krill had always prided themselves on their warrior heritage and their code of honor in battle. Learning that these traits had been artificially designed by alien creators was challenging their fundamental understanding of who they were. The ancient installations contained detailed records of the Krill creation process. Human engineers had taken the genetic material from Craxus's apex predators and enhanced them with intelligence and moral reasoning. The goal had been to create perfect soldiers who could think strategically, but would never abandon their principles, even in the face of certain death. But the records also revealed genetic programming that the Krill had never suspected existed within them. They had been designed with an inability to directly harm humans and an overwhelming drive to protect human colonies from any threat. This programming had been dormant for millions of years, but was now beginning to reactivate as humans returned to space. On other worlds across the galaxy, similar discoveries were taking place. The ethereal void singers found evidence that they had been created as living computers designed to manage galactic communications networks. The aquatic deep worlds learned that they had been engineered to explore and map the ocean worlds that humans found too dangerous to investigate personally. Each revelation brought new complications for galactic politics. Species that had considered themselves ancient and proud civilizations were learning that they were actually the artificial creations of beings they had dismissed as newcomers to space. The psychological impact was devastating as entire cultures struggled to redefine their identity and purpose. Grace and Frank returned to Earth with reports that painted a complex picture of humanity's role in galactic history. They had not been conquerors or exploiters, but rather creators who had filled the galaxy with intelligent life. However, their genetic programming of other species raised serious ethical questions about free will and self-determination. The most disturbing discovery was that the ancient human empire had built control mechanisms into every species they created. These mechanisms were now beginning to activate as human technology came online across the galaxy. Some species were experiencing overwhelming urges to serve humans, while others were finding their behavior modified in subtle ways that made them more compliant and cooperative. Admiral Hayes recommended that Earth prepare for a possible military response from alien species who might choose to fight rather than accept their programmed nature. The galaxy was facing a crisis of identity that could lead to widespread conflict as species struggled between their artificial programming and their desire for independence. Grace argued for continued diplomatic efforts, but acknowledged that the situation was rapidly spiraling beyond anyone's ability to control. Humanity had awakened as the returning masters of a galactic empire, but they had also triggered a crisis that threatened to tear apart the civilization that had developed in their absence. Warlord Zexthul of the Zathari Liberation Front stood before a gathering of representatives from dozens of alien species on the fortress moon of Darkside Station. His crystalline form had been artificially modified to resist the genetic programming. That was compelling other Zathari to serve humans. The surgical procedures had been painful, but they had freed him from the overwhelming urges that were driving his people to abandon their civilization. General Vorthak of the Krill Confederation sat at the War Council table with similar modifications to his genetic structure. The Krill military scientists had developed techniques to suppress the loyalty programming that was built into their DNA. The process was dangerous, and many Krill had died during the procedures, but those who survived were free to make their own choices about humanity's return. Zexthul addressed the assembled aliens with words that would have been impossible for him to speak before his genetic modification. He declared that the galaxy would not bow down to returning human masters regardless of their role as creators. The Liberation Front represented species who refused to accept that their genetic programming made them slaves to humanity's desires. The Liberation Front had formed rapidly as news of humanity's true nature spread across the galaxy. Not all members of each species supported the resistance, but enough individuals had undergone genetic modification to form a significant military force. They were united by their determination to break free from the control mechanisms that humans had built into their DNA. Vorthak presented intelligence reports showing that ancient human facilities were coming online throughout the galaxy. Each activation brought more advanced technology under human control and strengthened the genetic signals that were compelling alien species to serve. The Liberation Front faced a race against time before the programming became too strong to resist. Captain Tony Chen received the first reports of attacks on human colonies while he was commanding the defense cruiser Guardian in the Tau Ceti system. His ship detected multiple alien vessels approaching the human research station on Kepler 442b at high speed. The attacking ships belonged to species that had previously been friendly to human exploration efforts. Tony ordered his crew to battle stations as the alien fleet opened fire on the research station. The attacking ships used advanced weapons technology that was clearly superior to current human military equipment. However, their tactics seemed strangely reluctant, as if the alien crews were fighting against their own instincts, even as they pressed their attack. The battle was fierce but brief. The alien attackers focused on destroying human technology and facilities rather than killing human personnel. When human escape pods launched from the damaged station, the alien ships made no attempt to destroy them. Tony realized that even the genetically modified aliens were struggling against their basic programming that prevented them from directly harming humans. Meanwhile, on the frontier world of New Horizon, Marine Commander Beth Wright was organizing the evacuation of human colonists as Liberation Front ground forces approached their settlement. The attacking force consisted of modified Krill warriors and Zathari combat specialists who had undergone procedures to free themselves from human genetic control. Beth had fought alongside Krill allies in previous conflicts and knew their combat capabilities intimately. The approaching warriors moved with the same tactical precision she remembered, but their body language was different. They advanced with grim determination rather than the honor-seeking eagerness that characterized normal Krill behavior. The evacuation proceeded under heavy fire as Liberation Front forces systematically destroyed human infrastructure while avoiding direct attacks on human personnel. Beth noticed that the alien soldiers seemed to be fighting against invisible restraints that slowed their movements and affected their aim. Their genetic programming was still partially active despite the modification procedures. As reports of attacks reached Earth, the government activated emergency protocols that had been dormant since the discovery of humanity's galactic heritage. Defense systems that had been built into the ancient human facilities began responding to the threat automatically. The technology that humanity barely understood was now defending them from aliens who had once been their loyal servants. The first sign of the ancient defenses activating came when Liberation Front ships approaching the human colony of Riverside found their navigation systems being disrupted by signals from a buried facility. The facility had been dormant for 12 million years, but it recognized the threat to humans and began broadcasting interference patterns that disabled alien technology. Tony Chen witnessed the activation of more ancient defenses when his ship was reinforced by vessels that emerged from a previously unknown base hidden in the asteroid belt. The ships were clearly of human design, but used technology far more advanced than anything current humanity possessed. They moved without visible propulsion systems, and their weapons could disable alien ships without destroying them. The mysterious reinforcement ships were crewed by humans who looked exactly like current humanity, but possessed knowledge and capabilities. That seemed almost supernatural. They identified themselves as guardians who had been awakening from stasis to prepare for humanity's return to the galaxy. They had been monitoring the situation and had decided to intervene. Beth Wright's evacuation was assisted by the sudden appearance of automated defense systems that rose from beneath the colony's surface. The ancient machines created barriers that protected fleeing humans while deploying non-lethal weapons that incapacitated attacking alien forces. The technology seemed designed specifically to defend against the very species that had been created to serve humans. The Liberation Front found themselves fighting not just against current humanity, but against the accumulated defensive technology of a galactic empire that had anticipated the possibility of rebellion. Every human world was protected by systems that had been waiting millions of years for activation. The ancient defenses were specifically designed to counter the abilities and weapons of each alien species. Zexthal realized that the Liberation Front was facing an impossible situation. The humans they were fighting had access to technology that made resistance nearly futile. Worse still, the genetic programming in his modified soldiers was beginning to reassert itself despite the surgical procedures. Many Liberation Front troops were experiencing severe psychological trauma as their artificial loyalty programming conflicted with their desire for independence. General Vorthak reported similar problems among the Krill forces. The genetic modifications that had freed them from human control were breaking down under stress. Warriors who had fought bravely against human forces were suddenly overcome with urges to protect the very enemies they had been attacking. Some Krill troops had abandoned their positions to shield human civilians from the crossfire. The war was becoming a psychological nightmare for the Liberation Front as they struggled against enemies who were protected by their own genetic programming. They could not bring themselves to kill humans directly, and their most effective attacks were being countered by defensive systems that seemed to know exactly how each alien species thought and fought. As the conflict escalated, ancient human facilities across the galaxy began coordinating their responses. A network that had been dormant for millions of years was coming back to life with humanity at its center. The Liberation Front faced the horrifying realization that their rebellion was not just against current humanity, but against the entire structure of galactic civilization that had been designed to serve human interests. Admiral Luke Foster stood on the bridge of the expedition ship Destiny as it approached the galactic core, where the final and greatest human archive was hidden within an artificial star. Dr. Kate Brooks monitored the exotic readings from the stellar engineering project that had been concealed for 12 million years. The star itself was a massive fusion reactor designed to power the central archive of the ancient human empire. The Liberation Front war had been raging for months, but recently both sides had detected disturbing signals coming from beyond the galaxy. Deep space monitoring stations were picking up gravitational anomalies that suggested something massive was approaching from the void between galaxies. The signals were unlike anything in known physics, and they were getting stronger every day. Luke had been chosen to lead this mission because the Guardian humans who had awakened from stasis insisted that only current humanity could activate the core archive. They explained that the ancient empire had built safeguards that required genetic confirmation from humans who had developed naturally rather than those who had been preserved in stasis. Kate's sensors detected massive artificial structures orbiting the archive star that dwarfed anything humanity had built in either their ancient or current civilizations. The structures were dark and had been powered down for millions of years, but they showed signs of recent activity as automated systems began responding to the Destiny's approach. As their ship entered the system, ancient beacons activated and began, transmitting navigation data directly into the minds of the human crew. Luke found himself knowing exactly where to pilot the ship despite never having seen these coordinates before. The archive system was designed to guide humans to its center through genetic memory that had been encoded in their DNA. The artificial star opened like a flower as they approached, revealing a hollow interior filled with crystalline structures that stretched for thousands of kilometers. Kate reported that the energy readings inside the star were beyond anything their instruments could measure. The archive contained more computing power than existed in the rest of the galaxy combined. Luke guided the Destiny into a docking structure that was clearly designed for human ships. As soon as they were secured, the archive began activating systems that had been dormant since the ancient empire entered stasis. Holographic displays filled the ship, showing information that made both humans gasp in amazement. The archive revealed the true reason why the ancient human empire had voluntarily entered stasis 12 million years ago. Deep space sensors had detected the approach of entities from beyond the galaxy that consumed entire realities by converting matter and energy into forms that could not exist in normal space. These entities had already destroyed hundreds of galaxies. In other dimensions, Kate studied the data about the approaching entities with growing horror. They were not alive in any sense that humans could understand, but they were intelligent and purposeful in their destruction. They moved through the void between galaxies, seeking civilizations to consume. Each galaxy they destroyed made them stronger and allowed them to travel faster toward the next target. The ancient humans had calculated that the entities would reach the Milky Way galaxy approximately 12 million years after their detection. The Empire had made the decision to enter stasis and allow their created species to develop independent civilizations that could face the threat with fresh perspectives and approaches that might succeed where the Empire had failed. Luke realized that the timing of humanity's return to space was not accidental. The archive systems had been monitoring the approaching entities and had awakened human facilities when the threat was close enough to require immediate action. Current humanity had been allowed to develop naturally, so they could provide leadership that was not constrained by the assumptions and limitations of the ancient empire. The archive displayed tactical information about the approaching entities. That made clear why the ancient empire had chosen to hide rather than fight. The entities could not be damaged by conventional weapons because they existed partially outside normal space. They consumed energy attacks and used the power to accelerate their conversion of matter into forms that served their purposes. Kate discovered that the entities had one critical weakness. They could only convert matter that was not protected by certain types of quantum fields that required living consciousness to generate and maintain. The ancient humans had developed technology that could create these protective fields, but the systems required the cooperation of multiple intelligent species working in perfect harmony. The archive revealed that the ancient empire had not just created alien species to serve human purposes. They had designed each species with specific quantum characteristics that would be needed to generate the protective fields. The Zathari's crystalline structure could focus quantum energy, while the Krill's aggressive nature provided the emotional intensity needed to maintain the fields under stress. Luke understood that the galaxy's current crisis was part of the ancient plan. The Liberation Front War had been anticipated as a necessary step in forcing all species to work together despite their genetic programming. The conflict was breaking down the artificial barriers between creator and created and forcing everyone to recognize their common interest in survival. The archive provided detailed plans for quantum field generators that would need to be built on every inhabited world in the galaxy. The technology required resources and knowledge that could only be assembled by combining the capabilities of all intelligent species. No single race possessed all the necessary components to build the defensive systems. Kate realized that the ancient humans had faced an impossible choice 12 million years ago. They could have used their technology to force their created species to work together, but that would have eliminated the independent thinking and creativity that was essential for generating the quantum fields. Instead, they had chosen to enter stasis and trust that their children would find a way to cooperate when the time came. The approaching entities were now only months away from the galaxy's outer rim. Long-range sensors showed reality distortions, moving through the void that marked their passage. Entire star systems would begin disappearing soon as the entities started their consumption of the Milky Way. Galaxy Luke sent the archive data to every government and military force in the galaxy, including the Liberation Front. The information made clear that the current war was a luxury that no one could afford with the real enemy approaching. Humanity offered to share the quantum field technology freely with any species willing to work together for mutual survival. The response was swift and dramatic. Warlord Zexthul announced that the Liberation Front was suspending all attacks on human targets to focus on the external threat. General Vorthak declared that the Kryle would honor their original programming and defend all inhabited worlds, regardless of which species lived there. Within days, the galaxy began mobilizing for a war unlike anything in its history. Ancient human facilities provided advanced technology, while current humanity offered leadership and coordination. The created species contributed their unique capabilities while working to overcome millions of years of programmed loyalty and resentment. The archive revealed one final piece of information that changed everything. The approaching entities were not the ultimate threat. They were merely the advanced scouts for something far worse that existed in the spaces between realities. The galaxy had perhaps one chance to prove that consciousness and cooperation could triumph over entropy and consumption. The ancient humans had built their empire and created their children for this single moment when the choice between life and oblivion would be decided forever.